Hello everyone and welcome back to Game Brigade. Today I have Louie and Noah and we are going to be talking about our experiences playing Brink from IV Studios. So if you're looking for a breakdown regarding the components and the gameplay experience, this video will give you the best way to decide if this game is for you. Okay, so we are going to be talking about Brink. We just finished our second gameplay for this. So this will be kind of a first impressions. Louis, this was your first game. Noah, we played this a few times. So we're going to be giving you our impressions based on this prototype from IV Studios. So knowing that this is a prototype, so rules, components are subject to change, but we're going to give you our impressions based on what we have in front of us, so that maybe you guys can make a good decision. So this game, I want to say, in my opinion, the first thing we want to get out there, it's a negotiation-based game.
Yeah.
You could call it a worker placement. It's got some resource management. There's some tableau building. But the core reason I think anyone would be buying this game is negotiation. Now, Louis, can you kind of explain how the negotiation process works?
Yeah. So again, the negotiation, this interaction is the core mechanic here. And it's because you're getting a lot of resources, and a significant component of the resources, we'll get into more detail, but something that's outlined in white, is going to be a resource that you cannot use. So it's sitting there in front of you, and you are using it to trade and with other people that basically, if they trade you, you can get resources that you can use, they can use yours. Unlike, it's not a straightforward, okay, 2 purples is equal to 1 red. It really depends. So that, especially towards the end of the game, when I was playing, I was particularly invested in having a lot of yellows. And so now people are able to tighten the screws a bit. When I'm looking for yellows, they're looking for more. They're looking for me to give up more for those same yellows. So that's really that kind of core mechanic there.
Noah, what was your kind of take in negotiation, and how did it play out through your different games, and what was the takeaway, positively or negatively, in that?
I think that the positive aspects, I would say, are that it really influences influences player interaction. I think that there's a lot of games out there where you might be sitting twiddling your thumbs between turns and just sort of waiting for your turn to come back around or waiting for someone to make some sort of relevant play. In this game, I did feel like
you were invested.
I was invested. Every single turn that was being played, I wanted to know what they were getting, so I knew what I could sort of offer. The downsides, I do feel like there was a sort of rich get richer aspect to it. I definitely felt like in the second game, if I had no power to trade, I was stuck in a low cube count. I didn't have the resources to get any richer.
That's actually a very good point. The rich get richer. I didn't think about that, but there was, especially in the game we just played, I didn't have any purple cubes, which are wild. And people were doing this, hey, I need purples, I need purples. I'm like, I can't do anything in this this trading period, because until I get an action where I can get some purples, I'm really out of the game. And then by the time I got purples to trade, everyone had already traded out, and they're like, well, I'll give you 1 cube for your 2 purples. And you're like, well, shoot, man, I am really negative traded here. And there were times where you were so flush in cubes.
Yeah.
You're like, I'll give you, I'll take those 4 for 2 purples or 1 purple. And it was just like, no one else had anything willing to trade.
Yeah.
And here's the cross off. If you don't trade, you lose those resources that you could gain. So, because you can't keep them. They have to be traded the turn you get them. So we had people who did that, who are like, you know what, I don't want to make you richer.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to discard those cubes and get rid of them. But I'm also like, well, I'd rather have 1 than nothing. But then you're getting 4. So that's an interesting kind of counterplay with that.
Yeah, I noticed that with mine at the end of, so there's 3 rounds, we're going to in a bit, but at the end of my first round, I was sitting pretty. I had a lot of things. I pushed all in to get a few more points. Hindsight, I wish I hadn't, but it meant that I was just dead in the water at the start of the second round, because instead of having a lot to trade to keep this going, I had nothing. And so just watching, I was the 4th person on the start of turn 2, and it was just one of those where I was just not able to engage. And so, I mean, again, this is a lot of it's part of the evolution of learning how to play this, but it is if you don't have either the cubes to trade or the cubes that people want to trade, because different colors allow you to do different things, there's definitely that rich get richer.
Yeah.
So
from negotiation, we talked about negotiation is one of the key mechanics, but it's not actually how you win the game.
right.
At its core, Brink is a worker placement game, and it has an interesting mechanic because you're using this kind of 4X-like space map where you're building out, and then you also have 3 different types of workers. You have a class 1, 2, and 3 ship that all allow you to do more powerful actions as you go up, but there are some restrictions in terms of placement, which we'll get into. So talking about worker placement, Noah, did the actions feel good? Were they powerful? Did you feel like they were rewarding for you?
I did. I think that the aspect of having each worker placement be unique. So we have the 3 unique shapes of spacecraft, and they each do different things. Having that unique aspect did make it feel powerful, not just like for what I'm placing, but also the order in which I'm placing, which I haven't had in a worker placement game before.
Yeah.
Personally, so I thought that was super interesting.
Not to cut you off, but to talk about worker placement, normally in worker placement, it's can I take the most powerful spot first,
right?
And how do I get there and be efficient in terms of the spots? But this one is not only are you trying to get the spots, but you also have to consider, do I want to use a level 3 ship, a level 2 ship, or a level 1 ship? And how does that affect what my opponents potentially can do as well? So I think that's a different way this game kind of attacks that worker placement atmosphere.
The other interesting thing about that, a lot of worker placements, the amount of workers you have, the power of them is hidden. In this case, your resources are hidden from everybody else, but the ships are out in front. It's immediately obvious who has what ships left, how powerful they are, etc. So I did enjoy that, almost standing on its head, where, okay, I know exactly what Brian's got left, and so now how do I play my ship in that way? And then the resources become where it's trying to figure that out. So I liked that. That was a unique mechanic about that.
And this game also features an upgrade path, which is located here to the left of the player board, where you can upgrade your workers. And on the board, we have some of them upgraded. You either can get a kind of like a supply cargo container to get additional resources, or a cannon to increase power. And I think the decision paths that people make were vastly different. Like this player here, Jed, he went all resources. Over here, we have multiple cannons for the green player, giving different types of perspective, because not only are you sending your workers out for the resources and the action, it's then going to convert towards the scoring, which is actually the next thing I have to talk about, which is the scoring aspect. This game's scoring mechanisms are very different because you're going to be doing a blind vote, and then the area where you placed your ships will score you points if your vote won. Mm-hmm. So, Noah, I had Louis explain last time. Noah, can you kind of explain a little bit to the best of your ability, how does the voting work with the blind voting? And here's one of those trays for you if you need it.
For sure. So, over the course of this game, we're collecting these resources, which are incredibly valuable to us. The way that these blind votes work is we're taking those valuable resources that we've just earned and essentially putting them up to a sacrifice in hopes that we get big turnaround points. So everybody votes based off of the 4 colors that are available.
And these are resources that we have to have available to us in the supply that are hidden.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then once the vote has been cast blindly, everybody reveals at the same time. Whichever of the 4 colors has the most votes places first place on this point track, which converts to really big points for anyone who controls or has...
And that will be over here at the council. So to give an example, the round 1 in this situation, green was the highest vote. So then we look over here to the board and you calculate the ships that are touching green tiles and calculate their power. So one ship is worth 1 power, but there's also banding that on sectors that can give additional power, and then cannons give additional power. And you multiply the power on the board by the score here, which means not only are you trying to place your workers in places to affect your tableau and get your resources, you're also having to understand that to get points to actually win the game, you're going to have to also bid for the colors on the placements you've made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Really, really interesting kind of dynamic that's being played out there.
So to use a very specific example, with one ship and one round. So in round 3, we've got 4 points for a green area, 3 points for an orange area. So this ship right here, because of the cannon counts, it has an extra. So it's going to get 1-2 on green and 1-2 on orange. So it's got 8 points from this and 6 points from this.
Correct. That ship alone.
You get, and then it kind of is. So you end up with this really interesting dynamic, and you're trying to figure out, okay, also how do I want to place the ships based on what I think other people are going to want to do, and what's probably going to score, or am I going to bid heavy and try and derive the points a different way?
It is also to make sure we're talking about when we bid, any of the resources that you commit to a bid, if they win, they're gone. So they're not going to, that's why when you were talking about in round 1, when you bid very heavily to try to push a vote, and it was actually for yellow, you lost all those resources, and you didn't even win first place off of it. So it's a gamble you took, and then you lost in terms of value wise. So I think we covered the core mechanics. Let's talk about overall thoughts. What did you guys think regarding this game? Plus the good things, the bad things, the ugly things. What are your guys' thoughts?
I think one of the most interesting things that I found with this way of scoring and wanting to have the resources as well as the area control to score points, one thing that I found super interesting is that you may take a slightly subpar placement in order to make sure that you can gain the right resources to ensure that you win.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the game, I took a placement with one of my ships that in the end game would not have scored me quite so many points. It was this blue one here.
Yeah.
I could definitely have placed it in a much better spot that would have given me more green control, which is what I was aiming for. But my placement there gave me the resources I need to make several other plays.
And I think the reason, so here's the example as to why. So he's talking about getting green. You could say, Noah, you could have placed your ship here and gotten green. But specifically what you were aiming for is you wanted the action card actions.
The action card, and I also wanted the green resources and the blue resources.
Yeah, there were specific things you were aiming for, but you're also like, I need an upgrade.
Yeah.
And then the action cards, when you drew them, gave you the upgrade, and you're like, dang it.
Yeah. That felt bad.
Yeah. One of the things, talking about one of the things I didn't find enjoyable about this game is you could see here, this is a 5-player game we just played, and you can see that we have a vast portion of this map still undiscovered. And that's because as the game is ramping up, especially between rounds 2 and 3, your placements of your ships have to be really known. Like, you can't really take the risk of, I don't know what this unknown tile is going to be, and if it's not something I need, it could drastically lose me a turn or efficiency. And I didn't like that because it just felt like, man, I wish I could see what was under here or get further down into the tiles, but there's not enough reward for digging, especially once at this point there's enough placements for everyone to kind of do things, even though you can see we're really kind of jammed up in this sector. I mean, what did you guys think? What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, to get into specifics, so when you place a ship, you're counting everything that it's touching. So, I could have gone here, and I would have allowed me to flip over 2 new tiles. But I knew already, that's actually a great flip, because I knew already that just based off of what had been revealed, that orange, green, and possibly yellow were going to be kind of what people were going to be fighting over, just the way the board had laid out in earlier rounds. And so for me to go out there, what I'm doing is I'm sacrificing almost a potentially really valuable ship placement. So instead of scoring a ton of points here, it's now scoring me nothing. No one's fighting me over blue. And especially endgame, like, oh goody, I have extra blue resources. Well, at that point, I had already capped out kind of what I needed blue resources for. I really needed orange and yellow. And so something like this would give me the opportunity to do we'll get into this, but, kind of an upgrade here. That track was a rider track. That track was already full.
Yeah.
So I wish that there was a benefit to exploring, because I wanted to know what else was available. There's some really cool tokens.
Yeah, we didn't see any of the
colorless ones.
The colorless tiles in this last game. There's one. We didn't see any of these colorless ones that could give you more resources, and it's because you just like, for example, for me, at the end of the game I was needing upgrades no matter what. I was like, I can't take an action right now if it doesn't give me an upgrade, because I needed the 15 bonus points to even be in contention with everyone, because everyone else had them. So I was like, I have to do all 3 actions upgrading or I'm out of the game. So I couldn't risk coming out here. And maybe that's fine. Maybe that's part of the game design. But that's actually not the first time. It wasn't just isolated to this game. Our other gameplays had the exact same thing, where we all kind of conjugated and kind of were bubbling all over each other instead of risking and exploring. So that was one of my downsides. The other downside, I think you want to take the lead on this one, though, was the color. So I'll let you...
Yeah, I mean, just to be blunt, the color choice, and this has been a pet peeve of mine with multiple games. This isn't limited to this. With the literal entire color palette available, so this is orange, this is yellow, and especially as you're getting out that this is an orange cube, this is a yellow cube. If you've got sitting any distance, it becomes really unclear, and so you're thinking like, oh, and this is red. So there's just not, here's a great one here that this is orange, this is red, and if you're viewing it from a distance, multiple times as the colors could have popped in a different way or been substantially different, black, white.
And we mentioned multiple times, it's a prototype.
Yes.
This can change. But we do want to at least put it out there that the current color selections, especially between orange and yellow, are so close. Like, the cubes of yellow are yellow, but when you place them on it makes it look, okay, that's orange, but it's not. And then you take an orange, and it actually matches the yellow, which is wild.
Yeah.
And you're like, what is going on here? So you have to remember, no, what's orange is orange. So it was a complaint. I don't think it detracted from the gameplay. I wouldn't not get this game right now because of it, because I still had a great time.
Yeah.
But it definitely was an issue. Another thing I wanted to bring up, and I feel like I'm harping on the game in terms of overall thoughts here and negatives. Not to cut you off if you were going to say something,
no.
But I was on my tip. We played this at 5-player. I think that's a little bit much because the game can drag. There were multiple times where Noah was like, yes, you want to be involved in the game. I said this is a game it's hard to go to the bathroom in, because if you go to the bathroom, you come in, you're like, what the hell's going on? All these biddings are happening. But there was also times where I had no bids, and I was the 5th player, and it just seemed like it took a long time because the negotiations take time, people's actions take time. So there is a definite cautionary here that I don't think this is better at higher player counts, and I would probably stick to that 3 to 4 player count for me. So just a warning in terms of that.
I would agree with that, I think.
Yeah.
And to that point, I think if you have a game group that enjoys these interpersonal, there's a lot of interaction going on at all times. This is phenomenal. If your player group skews more towards the kind of organized solitaire, so to speak, this is not going to go well.
Yeah.
And I think I have a family member who I love dearly who suffers from end stage analysis paralysis. This game would be a disaster. Because it's such a fun game if you're doing the give and take. And I think we had a really good group. We really enjoyed it. If you have someone who's going to get bogged down, even I had that where I was trying to do things in here and a couple of people were like, let's go, Louis, come on. So I just would caution that if you have that. If this is never a game to play if you have that one person in your game group. We all have one who can't get off their phone. This is like, you got to be off your phone, stay off your phone, throw their phone in a bucket of water kind of thing. But if you've got people who are usually on their phone, also wouldn't recommend that. But overall, I had a lot of fun. It's just this game in particular is one where I'm like, I can also easily see game groups I've been in before, where this would not have worked out as well.
And I think that's, if you've played any type of IV Studios game, almost all of their games, I think, except for Mythic Mischief, have some sort of banter, bidding, collaborating with your opponents in some way. You know, we're against each other, but you help me, I help you. That's very common in IV Studios. And I know the original Moonrakers, people had a hard time with the bidding aspect or the negotiation aspect. That is prevalent in this game. So be aware, if your group is not that type of group, I don't know how well this would land with your party. No, do you have any add-ons on that?
I think kind of in following that, I think that, like, for me, I'm not typically the type of person who loves negotiation games. I find that I, as a person, am not super confrontational, and so I often find a sort of detriment where I can kind of feel like, all the good plays are taken by people who, like, are more aggressive, and I just can't fulfill that role. That being said, I super enjoyed kind of finding the groove of knowing what people are wanting and being able to sort of play to that.
Yeah.
To kind of taking the backseat tactic.
And people almost always have a certain, like trade that they're willing to accept.
Yeah.
You know, like, I'll take that. Yeah, that's a good trade. I'll take that trade. So I think that's fun to be like, it's not like hard negotiation. It's literally like, all right, guys, I've got, let's see, what's a more realistic one?
Here, we'll do an example. I'm going to place yellow
No, let's just do
here.
this. I'll just say, I've got 2 purples. And Noah will be like, all right, I've got 3 yellows and a green. And I'm like, all right, sweet. I'm not going to pull these cubes out, but whatever. Like, sweet, I'll take that trade. Super simple. Like, that's the kind of way the negotiations work. The conflict comes in when you've got multiple people being like, I'll match that trade.
Right.
And I'm a butt hurt king. So multiple times I felt like I was being slighted because I'm like, what the hell?
As he took second place comfortably. So yeah.
Maybe. I can't remember where I was at. Did I get second place?
Yeah, you did. Although I do feel like I kind of sold you a little bit there.
So I guess that would be one thing is, again, back to the, I don't think there's king making in this, but I think it's, there can be, again, this is a game, just to go back to it, a lot of fun, but if it's not if that negotiation, but again, to your point, it didn't feel nearly as cutthroat, because there's some negotiation games where if Brian and I make a deal, we both benefit massively, and you are just left out in the cold. Yeah. Whereas, for this, it's much clearer on like, okay, so just to get a little bit more granular in case people have questions, I'm going to place my level 3 ship with an upgrade here. So I'm going to get 4 purple cubes and 4 yellow cubes. Again, you think that's orange, it's yellow. And 4 yellow cubes. If I don't make a trade, because these are outlined in white, if I don't make a trade, these are gone. So on one hand, I want to get the best trade possible. On the other hand, I'd like to get a trade because otherwise it's useless. These purples are wild. So I could just have this, and Brian may say, he'll give me 1 of his wilds for 2 of mine. That seems silly, except that right now these are just going away. So if I give him these 2, I get this one back, and am able to use this later on. And so then, someone else can come in and say, I'll sweeten the deal slightly, or I'm not as interested in your purples, but I'm really interested in your yellows. So that's how that negotiation works. And because that's happening with every single person, it doesn't have, to me, the thing that I like the most about that negotiation, because I've seen it get ugly, is there was never anything punitive. Like, okay, if I didn't make that trade, maybe I really need those purples, so maybe the next person who gets purples, I'll sweeten the pot more. I'll make it more appealing for them because I really need these. And so I like that, how it was, because it was moving so quickly, it never had this feeling of like, if I don't get this trade, I've lost the game.
Yeah. So, Noah, what are your thoughts on this one? What are your final kind of like overall thoughts about Brink?
I love it. I think it's a lot of fun.
Nice.
The negotiation aspect, like I said, is not usually my forte, but in combination with kind of everything else, allowed for some really unique, really tricky plays.
Yep.
One of the big things that I went for kind of in the last sort of rounds was I wanted to not take control of the board and not go for resources. I wanted to take control of the scoring aspect. So I played a bunch of the rider cards right at the end, and I made sure that what was being played was going to, in the long run, benefit me. I ended up setting it up so that if green got second place in that vote, fantastic, I get a bunch of points. If green takes first, fantastic, I get a bunch of points, and my opponents don't get quite as many.
Yeah.
Either way, it favored me.
Yeah.
I super like that it allows for the tricky
So
plays.
the rider we didn't talk about. They are rules that are changing each round that go towards what the scoring is going to be. And talking about the actions about the game, I felt like every action was really good. Like drawing action cards was really good. Getting agents to build a tableau was really good. Upgrading my ship was really good. When I first started playing this game, I thought the rider action was awful. I was like, I don't want to do that. It doesn't benefit me. But once you actually get deeper into the strategic aspects of the game, I was like, you know what? I think the rider action's actually really powerful because you get to dictate how are the votes going to go. For example, I played one that gave +2 to a vote regardless. I didn't have to worry about putting more. It's going to add more votes anyways. So those little swings, especially when your resources are so valuable, are very, very important. And so I think it really made there's a lot more types of things you can do in this. Yeah.
I hated it because it lost me the game. So no, but the other thing to that point is there are 4 rider cards, and then that's it. So a rider card that would have allowed me, each round, that would have allowed me to combat some of these was out. So I think I was probably in the catbird seat on that. I felt pretty good about that. And you played 2 riders because I was just focused on getting a couple other things that shifted my whole game, and I had to rapidly offload resources to my detriment to make sure I didn't cost even more points. And so I thought that was A, very well played by you, and B, ignore the rider cards to your detriment, especially in rounds 2 and 3.
Yeah. So no, Louis, what's your thoughts on this then? What are your final thoughts?
Overall, I really like this. I think that I am to think of something. I played Veiled Fate and was immediately like sold.
Yeah.
I want it. I can think of the exact game group, and for me, not to make it about that, but we have several couples that my wife and I know that are not as hardcore gamers, and I knew they would just immediately generate, so I was just boom, done. I like this one. I think it would be, although the underlying mechanics are pretty straightforward, I think that if you've got some people who are less familiar with gaming, this might feel a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
Because it's that whole...
There's a lot of connecting links. Like, not only you're placing here, but you got to remember that you're going to have to score off those points, and then everything kind of matters. Like, you have to have some forethought going on. It's not just place a worker, get an action, and then we're going to calculate at the end of the game who did the best.
Yeah.
There's a lot more going on.
Yeah.
You brought up an analogy that when you said it, I was like, this is great analogy. The rock climbing one.
Oh yeah, thanks. So I do a lot of climbing, and there's a lot of climbs where once you've gotten to a certain strength and ability, the climb is really easy. But before then, if you're learning to climb, it just feels so impossible, and so it almost becomes tricky to give that climb a rating. Because if I know how to climb it well, it's actually a fairly easy climb. But if I haven't hit that level yet, it's a really hard climb, and so that's, I think, for this.
And it makes sense. Like, depending on your player group, this could feel overwhelming. So in terms of the weight scale, for gamers who are pretty into the complex or heavier weight games, this is going to feel lighter in terms of the scale. But for people who are used to games like Point Salad, Wingspan, I could see this feeling a little bit more complex or taking more turns to feel like things are meshing together. And not saying that that's a plus or minus, but I just want to make sure people are aware that that's the kind of the impression we were getting based on just the amount of mechanisms going on. And we haven't even talked about all the mechanisms. Obviously, you have the ambassadors here. We haven't even talked about the factions. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on that you have to be aware of, as well as what your opponents are doing. So, but overall, you thought this was a solid.
Yeah,
solid
overall,
game.
I thought this was really solid. I'd be interested. I also like any game that when I'm done, I'm like, I really want to play this again because now I want to change things. I'd be really interested with the same game group to how could we make this like some actions I made. That to me is the mark of a good game. When I finish it, I'm like, like dang it, I want to play this again because I want to get better at this and fix that.
For me, I'm going to finish. There's a lot of things that are going well for this game. Mm-hmm. I like the modularity. I like the way the group is consistently engaged in the game. Board gaming to me is a social experience, and I love that this highlights it. I like that there's a lot of different variable ways that you could potentially play, and because the way the board is made, it kind of changes every time. There are some things that I had some complaints with. Some of these powers seemed like they were harder to get based on the resources. But I will say, after playing every single game IB Studios has made to this point, I think they just keep getting better and better and better with each of the releases. And I think Brink might be one of the smoothest releases I've seen from them yet. And I'm very, very excited to see where this company can go. Yeah. And I'm excited to see that this game is like, I think they've kind of really started to found their cruise control. Like, I think things are running really smoothly for their company, and I'm very, very excited for this one. So I think we're going to wrap up unless anyone has any other final thoughts. We're good?
I think just the only thought I would have is that, there's some games that I've played where I'm like, I like this, but I don't know what niche it fills in my collection that I don't already have 2 or 3 of. This one feels like I don't have a game like this. I don't have that fun negotiation with that I would want to play, bring some newer people up. Like, no, this is, kind of push them into that. So I think that's the biggest thing for me is I think this is a really good game, and it occupies a spot that I don't think any other game occupies that spot. So that's, I think, the biggest thing for me.
Well, I appreciate you guys for staying and watching our show. Noah, thank you for joining me. It's first time here in Game Brigade Studios. Louis, you're a veteran. Thank you guys for watching. My name is Brian. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe and hit that like button, and we will talk to you very soon.